To drive?
Oh, that's.
To drive.
Oh.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's Friday morning, February 10th, and we're going to continue our discussion about the miscellaneous changes to the DMV bill. We have with us this morning Commissioner Wanda Benoli, Deputy Commissioner Mike Smith, to go over some of the items that we're interested in doing this morning.
So, good morning. Thank you for having us in. We were asked to come in and talk about section 16, which is the
Okay.
mobile ID.
Section
Oh, yeah.
And so what I'd like to do, we have a really,
Is that the video?
yes.
Oh, good. 'Cause
Well, we have one video. It may not be the Amazon one that we put on there.
it is so simple.
Okay, where is the, share screen?
I was persuaded by the lieutenant the other day, the video was, so I'm fine.
Okay, post disabled attendee screen sharing.
This should go on this week. Senator, you're interested.
No, it's telling me it's just that the host
That's the
disabled.
form of identification.
That's the one you were interested in. The phone.
What's that?
It says it's disabled.
The phone.
No, this
I haven't
is-
even seen it.
no,
I
this
don't know
is
what it is. I
the
gotta pull.
Yeah, no,
No, this
this
is
is the one with the-
identification.
the pen was in here.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
You didn't like it?
No, he was okay with it.
Because it's not the
Recall.
license, it's
It
just
should be
a.
a code.
He said they're already doing it for insurance. and-
Yeah, I'm, if they're fine, I'm fine.
Let's try this again.
The back is blank.
I really, just want to share, I really just raised it because we're gonna start having phones be part of those pullover stops. There's so many peccadillos in our laws that I wanted to be on the radar, so if they need something to be more considerate about touching a phone during an active pullover, but they had their chance and they don't seem to be alarmed, so.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
Yes. Yeah, I'm
So,
still baffled by
Here's the
that a little bit.
PowerPoint, right?
When a text comes in.
And then I'll just go down here and
They
go
don't
into
use that
share
box. It's
screen.
little, but I
It's
don't.
just like, don't tell the cop.
Now this is different.
We're gonna come look under the seat.
And I'm getting this.
Phone for a couple hours.
Oh, you make some money.
I'm trying to get it.
You do this, scroll through it, you'd be okay.
Where is, I'm sorry, what?
Oh, Connecticut's the one other.
But I'm,
Yeah, I know, she's already on the last page.
Well, the other parts.
They haven't even
All right,
started.
go ahead. This is
And it was like reading a children's book here.
Okay.
Yeah, they try to keep it that way. Brian.
Have you ever read a book that started from the front page and brought it back? You go to the back.
I read the newspaper and a magazine backwards.
Okay,
Jane, so that's where all the good stuff is.
that's right. No, she's right. No, it's good.
Why have to do all that fluff, just find out the ending, right? The facts, give me the facts.
There? Yes. Wow.
Department of Motor Vehicles.
Well, good morning. That was very difficult.
Wow, I got it
Okay.
right in front of me.
So I just wanna, when the miscellaneous bill was presented, there was a lot of conversation around section 16. And Mike and I have a lot of opportunity to attend some trainings, have conversations with other states as we're preparing and looking at the next phase of driver services. Working with TSA, which you don't always think, oh, DMV has conversations with them. However, we do. We're a partner because we are issuing the, individuals' identifications. It's a desire for residents to have this option. They're using it today on their phones. They use it on their watches, and they carry their passports. They carry their credit cards. And so our goal and the intent of the language is to get support and authority from the legislature to set up the system for individuals to access this. We're not going to manage, we are going to work out the details behind the security with our system and with Apple Pay or whomever we use. And that's the intent of the language, but it will be an individual's choice. And that's what this PowerPoint, I'll just walk you through to give you a little.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This service, and, you know, obviously that's what it is because it's at the request. What is it gonna cost the department to set up and initiate providing this service?
So the conversations that we have engaged in is, there's always a cost. There's a cost in staff investing in it, ADS, you know, working on it. But at this time, it's not us buying a system. There may be a fee that the individual has to pay, and we have not resolved that, but I'm not looking for a large appropriation. And other states that have implemented
I
it,
would suggest you are looking for an appropriation.
no, we're not.
You said you weren't looking for a large one, so.
Oh, I apologize. Nope, I'm not looking, this would,
She's not asking for 10, she's asking for 5.
Just small.
The small one.
so I don't have all of the detail. I don't have, I mean, right now, as I understand, there's been some fees associated, but the customer paid it because they wanted to access it. There will be staff investment, you know, in working out the details and working with ADS, but I'm looking at this as another service, you know, that we provide that would be embedded into the, if there is a cost, into the normal operational.
It's just to help build out this new system that you have. It has a function in there, and because I know in my real estate stuff and in the franchises that I have this vast amount of information that we can use, and we use very, very little of it. It's just a function that you're having with this and just helping to try to modernize. And
It is absolutely about modernization and making our services available to customers' demands. It is not directly connected with the core modernization. We'll be able to enhance the services with the core modernization, but it's not a part of the module. And the next piece that we do is driver services, where all of the credentials and everything else lives. It's separate. It's, you know, we envision that, you know, it's on our home, you know, on our homepage, and the customer will access it on their own. And the items that I can connect it to now, like I said, is your credit card. It's something that you can do today. If you travel, you know, out of the United States, you can actually carry your passport on your phone. You can carry it now on your iWatch. I don't have one. I think that's just too much. I don't even know what it's properly called. And we have residents that want to access it.
So when you have they come in my store with their phone, they hit the credit card machine, so that means their credit card is on their
Yes.
phone.
Yes.
They take a picture of it or something, or?
Yes,
Oh.
you work through your credit. I haven't done it, but you go through a process, I think with the credit card, and you download it to your wallet,
Okay.
and it
I
is
wonder how
there.
that's happening, because they just come in, they take their phone, hit the machine, and it's gone.
So you're asking for authorization to move forward with this.
Yes.
What is the timeline that you have in mind? Obviously, you feel that the cost would be modest, but there is some cost in terms of staffing or, I don't know, systems development. And it would be a nice service, and obviously other states are providing it to license holders, or even people who don't have a license but might have an ID through DMV. So what's the time frame here?
So we would be looking, putting a team together after we go live with the first, with what we're rolling out, the vehicle services in November. And we'll do some work internally, you know, with the team, and we'll start looking at what do we have to collect. We'll have to have conversations with our vendor on the credentials to see what connections are there. We have to have conversations with the ADS team, which is the Agency of Digital Service. So we will begin the conversations. We do not have a deadline date. We are looking at adding this as a service and bringing it forward. Having the ability to do this could have could connect when we start to work on the scoping of the driver services.
My question is, do you need legislation to do this? Or is it
We
something you can do
believe-
administratively as a service?
Well, that's a great question. We believe we needed to bring this forward to you because it is biometrics. We're not managing it, but using your new phone that you just got, it is, you stop. I think we were sensitive to the conversations in the past about the biometrics that DMV was using and we turned off. In order for a customer to access this, we're not doing biometrics on our side, but they're gonna have to do facial recognition. We would be setting up a service that is capturing their face, not shared with us, but that's part of the, part of the verification. And I think we were just sensitive to that, Senator Kitchell, and we wanted to let you know that if someone uses it, we're not bringing back facial recognition, but they would be accessing it in their phone, which they do today. And that was because we're not amending any sections of law, or did we? Sorry, Mike.
No, you're adding something.
We're adding the authority. So we could do it administratively. I think we wanted to have a conversation with
There are a
all
lot
of
of
you.
changes coming in the future. My
Yeah.
God, changes in the last few years.
Well, it raises a question about, how much we load into statute and how much, because there are lots of things that people, agencies do that improve services or quality or whatever, and they don't require statutory authorization necessarily. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, because we're not asking for a fee.
We're
We're,
not engaging in any kind of biometrics here. That would happen, but that would happen at the other end. That's with Apple or whatever entity they're using.
and it's customer driven. It's customer choice. We would be putting it on our homepage and on My Vermont DMV.
So I'm completely fine with this now, and I appreciate all the presentation. I do think it's a healthy conversation, so people know what's coming down the pike. Enhanced driver's licenses, my understanding, those have RFIDs in them. We won't be able to have enhanced driver's licenses on the phone, will we?
I don't think again, yeah, I don't think they would even, you might be able to put your data to use,
Across the border.
not to cross the border, but you would still be able to use it for other
I
things.
don't know how you can use passports because they have that also. Yeah, well, yes, yeah.
I've started that process and then I always stop because I get a little antsy
Frankly, on
sometimes.
an international flight, they won't even let you use your phone boarding pass. They require a paper one.
Wow,
And I know because they required it when I went to Rome and went to Ireland just a few months ago. So they don't like, for international travel, they want the passport and they want you to have a paper boarding pass.
What's required to go to Canada?
Enhanced driver's license.
Or passport.
or passport.
Right, but it has to be an enhanced, you can't go with just a driver's license.
Okay,
But you have the.
yeah.
That's with the star and the flag, or just?
Yes,
You need the flag and the star. What's
Yeah.
the star? So.
Real ID.
Real ID.
real ID.
So in your mind, maybe this is too far down the field, but when you get the enhanced driver's license in this world, will you allow people to have both an enhanced driver's license and then the digital driver's license that they could use for everything else?
So this is, we are clearly, and we are not trying to provide, the digital license is not for your credential would law, where when you're stopped or if you have to go, it's that, this is not replacing that. We are still going to issue that. I believe the language and
Very clear.
it says may
It's a choice for the customer.
for credit for the officer.
No.
No.
This doesn't address the opposite.
Yes, it does. Sorry.
It's not a replacement.
It's not a replacement.
For your
She did put
license.
language in there.
I'm pretty sure.
Subsection B.
So, yeah,
It's a losing.
there is language.
Hold into the room until this rescue.
And not instead of, I mean, I'm not opposed if you want to strengthen that. And now I'm going back to the question that you asked earlier, Senator, I mean, we may want to put some expectations on, you still have to have your credential for stops for that type of, because of the concerns with, the enforcement. I mean, they know they have to modernize, but I think there are concerns about giving the phone, having them take the phone to their car, scanning the card. So I'm not opposed if we want to tighten that up, if you want to tighten that up.
But that's assuming that we've determined that we want to load up our statutes with this, as opposed to maybe some kind of communication or kind of statement of support. And Anthea is here, so she can listen to this. And then what you do administratively for notifications about the limitations of what this, this mobile ID can and cannot do. I don't know how prescriptive we need to be in statute with such evolving, it seems to me, things are subject to change so quickly. What you're doing for notification or translation or whatever, seems like, a lot of this is operational that needs to be very dynamic and very responsive. And the legislative process, by definition, is not. And so I'm only, you'll know how I feel.
I really appreciate that.
Language, but
Yes.
Anthea,
I was just gonna add, and I'm apologies for missing the beginning of the conversation,
Oh,
23 VSA section 601 does say, except as otherwise provided by law, a resident shall not operate a motor vehicle on a highway in Vermont unless he or she holds a valid license issued by the state of Vermont. And it goes on to say, if you wanted to strengthen something to say you actually need to physically have it, I think that would be the place to do it. And then you would leave the mobile piece to itself. If you wanted to have something in session law requiring
report back.
I was gonna say required dissemination of information. But nothing, the mobile license language is in addition to existing law, and existing law does.
It's not a
require
mobile license, it's a mobile ID.
A mobile ID.
We've got to be very careful that it is not a license. It is allowing the person to use their data that's on the DMV file to populate this mobile ID app, and it's their choice. That's how I'm understanding it.
Then this
And that's our
language should
intent.
change, because this says driver's license. That's the phrasing that's used in the proposal for the miscellaneous motor vehicle code. But I can certainly change it to mobile ID.
I think we need to be very careful about that.
Right.
But my fundamental question is, do we have to put this in the bill to begin with?
Giving them the authority to issue the mobile ID.
Yeah,
I'd like to get back to you on that one. I also think you might want to, if you want to have parameters around it, like, for example, it needs to not be an ID that you have to give to the officer. Like, there is very important language in here, I think, for the protections of some of the things you're concerned about, like the handing over a phone, like the maintenance of data, like there being that limited profile piece. I think based on the testimony you've heard from the DMV and the fact that they're proposing this, this is the iteration that they have. But this is your opportunity to say that if you're going to do this, and it's discretionary, the commissioner may issue this mobile ID. These are the requirements that it needs to meet. So it's not just like a picture of a license on a phone. It's something that has the data and the framework
I
behind
think
it.
we're conflating a mobile ID with a license. And we've got to be, and we're anticipating the future where you might put your license on your
It should
phone.
be as simple as a license plate on a vehicle where they have that information already, and all they're doing is verifying it, that that's who you are, and that's what it is.
That is not what this language is. This language is contemplating things like, if you want to go to a bar and just say I'm over the age of 21, or you want to go to a grocery store and say I'm just over the age of 21, and only disseminate that information with this concept of a limited profile. If the direction of the committee is not to allow that, then I don't think you want this language. If the direction of the committee is really just as simple as a picture of your ID on your phone, that's not this.
Well, then I guess we need to be clear what this or it is. I feel like Bill Clinton.
Maybe we should watch that little video. I did watch the video and I think I might communicate it more. So it's not a matter of showing the bartender your phone. It's really they tap it and then it validates it with an internet connection that it is in fact confirmed and then the photo can show up. So if they
And
want to go.
that's
that
fine,
Is that what we're
that's
trying to
mobile
do?
ID, that's mobile ID.
I didn't bring that.
But I'm increasingly inclined to say I like the separation of the two and that to operate a motor vehicle, you need a driver's license, which is issued by
I'd
the
like to
state.
be that we're in transportation and what we're trying to do is just an officer stops somebody. They're just trying to get through the process and
And the mobile ID does not do that
Right.
for law enforcement.
Right, law enforcement would say, we need to see your credential.
Right.
And they won't, it's not for them to take their phone because we're, everyone is concerned about that. And that's not the service I'm trying to provide. I am not trying to replace your driver's license, your full driver's license with all necessary information.
So this whole thing is, I think, leading to confusion. Issuance of mobile driver's license. You're talking right here, and you're using mobile ID up here. So
Yeah.
I think that's why we're getting into some confusion about what it is that you are contemplating. And my thought was, it was a mobile ID. It did not replace your license. It was a service so that you can use it in other settings to validate your age and who you are. So,
So the heading, Matt took it right from the bill and,
okay.
so I apologize for that confusion.
So I guess if we're gonna say, we wanna say that that's a service that DMV provides, then what are the parameters around that service? But I think we've got to be clear, what we're talking about is a mobile identification customer service here. And in no way is it connected or replacement or whatever for a valid driver's license.
yeah, because I think
That's what I'm struggling with.
Because I think that, and I don't know how the bars do it now, because it's not where we.
You don't usually get carded?
I wish I did. I didn't even when I was 15. But I think we have to be careful about putting something out there with the chance for somebody, technology very savvy wise, to go in there and tap their phone at a bar and not have the, and not have the right type of situation. I mean, you look at a card like this, there you go, that's it is, it's got the benchmarks, it's got the safety marks in it and all of that. And if all we are trying to do is help an officer and help somebody who's gotten pulled over to get through the process quicker, that's where we need to stay in our lane, I feel.
Well, but we aren't going that way.
Right.
We're not giving full.
I like the idea of coupling this mobile ID with the driver's license. So you apply for your driver's license, validates who you are. It's a government issued document that also has this feature of a mobile ID that can be used for TSA, that can be used for buying alcohol and all those things. So I think it's great that we're doing this, and we need to move forward. Do you know what other states have done? Do other states?
We have 30 states, and
What do they call it? A mobile ID?
I believe gosh, I just lost the button. I think it's probably, what?
Over Maryland, right?
They use the term license?
So these are some of the states that have it. These are different examples of the wallet. You can see some states are doing pilots. I've spoken with the Commissioner of Maryland quite a few times regarding this, so I was using some of their information.
AMVA's model legislation that just came out in January is the mobile driver's license, MDL model legislation. And the definition is for electronic credential is an electronic extension of a departmental issued physical credential that conveys identity and driving privilege information.
So AMVA is our association that sets best practices that are all of the jurisdictions use. We don't always adopt everything that they have. Every state will modify it to fit what their state's needs are. I will share with you that Maryland was ahead of the last AMVA best practice, and the recent document that Anthea is referring to was based on Maryland's model as they walked
But
through this.
Annabeth's talking about driving privileges. You're not talking about driver's privileges.
I'm not proposing that at this time. AMBA has this, if you're going to use it for that, here are the best practices. I mean, I look at this as almost a layer back because of the concerns from law enforcement that it is an ID. That you can use it, you know, just like we're talking about businesses using it as accepting it as that it is available. If a business wants to use that document, the ID on the phone to sell alcohol, it doesn't mean they have to. And we're not saying this is shall, you know, that's gonna be a business choice, and right.
I understand that. I think we need to be clear what we're authorizing here. And we're using mobile ID, and we're using mobile driver's license as one and the same. But the way you're presenting it, they absolutely are not. It doesn't replace the physical ID. And so it's very clear. And so we're using a mobile ID, which I think we're all saying makes a whole lot of sense. But if we're writing something, then it seems like we need to be clear, because at this point, we are not authorizing, and nor are you asking to issue a mobile driver's license that would validate driving privileges.
Correct.
It may be out there in the future, but that's not what you're asking us right now. So that's why I think we need to be clear that your discussion and your request is to support a mobile identification system.
Add on to the driver's
Yes,
license.
yes, but it is not a replacement to the driver's license, nor should it be portrayed as a replacement.
Absolutely.
If some of the confusion comes from, you can have an ID and you can have a driver's license, but they're both IDs, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, I could have a passport and a driver's
you
license,
certainly can.
or I could have a birth certificate
That's a
and
good
a driver's
But
license.
the point I was trying to make is, you know, in the motor vehicle community, they called it a mobile driver's license because of the fact that it also does your ID. And mobile, it can get incredibly confusing. I understand what you're saying, though.
Yeah. I mean,
We issue more than licenses. Yeah.
Well, you do, because you issued that non-driver's identification card for people who are not driving for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, we have family members that come in with their children that are even eligible for a driver's permit, but they will get an EDL identification so they can conveniently go across the border.
We have to have a full ID for themselves, not.
Yeah.
So we can enter.
All right, so are we,
And so I think I'm taking out every place that it says driver's license or mobile non-driver and just having it say issuance of mobile identification card.
I think, you know, and again, back to your earlier comment, we need to bring this forth to you. I appreciate the conversation that we had. Is this just something operational that you can do? But I think at this point, after this conversation, having some language that really clearly defines what we're moving forward with, that is an ID, I think would be
the
beneficial.
parameters of, as
Yeah.
Anthony was saying.
Yeah.
So it's not, it can give assurances that we're not, getting into that privacy issue or the biometric issue, et cetera, that has been a source of concern. That was entertaining.
Well, we appreciate the conversation. So I'm gonna,
I'm sure you do.
no, we actually do.
We just see these out in the hall.
We absolutely do. I just don't know
Can you imagine this?
If y'all want to watch the video, it's like 3 or 4 minutes long.
So this is the video that I had the team load. This is you, this is the individual loading it.
So this isn't the cartoon.
No, this isn't, but
We only like
Anthea has it. Well, it might be faster for me to,
Want me to email you the link?
Like,
She's probably got it.
I don't have it, not, So this computer is supposed to be set up just for presentation, so it's been a little,
Mike, can you share something if I send it to you?
and how do why won't it even let me out?
She shares her screen, she has to check the box to share the audio too, if she wants to pull up broadcast.
Yeah.
Or I need the Zoom link, 'cause I don't have the Zoom link for this meeting.
Share. We don't have to watch it.
You don't.
It's a cartoon.
Just an idea of useful.
Bugs Bunny. My favorite. Da-da-da-da-da.
Was it slippery when you drove?
Just off the ramp, the road was perfect, when we got on the ramp, there was a guy went up on the bank there. because it was
But last
frozen.
night?
Oh, last night was a disaster going home, last night it was, you couldn't see the snow, only till I got to Richmond, then it was just rain.
Had to stand there 80 or?
What was your trip?
Yeah.
It was not great. I can tell you, you know that,
You
that
had it
long
this way.
hill from Goodrich's, you know how you climb up to Molly's Pond? That boy, I hope I make this hill because,
Really?
yeah, I was losing obviously speed. And it was slushy and icy, and I went from 35 to 52, which meant my wheels were spinning, but I wasn't going 55 or 53. And the other cars, we crawled up
You
through
get that all-wheel
there.
drive, you love it.
And then I had to, my driveway, I had to do, I didn't make it in the first time, but
Really?
I had to back down the road. Well, I've done that for years.
Yeah,
Just appropriate you a new car.
Operate.
Yeah, right.
Go Bugby Days.
Well,
Nathan, Nathan.
maybe we can put it in with you and the chief.
Maybe I can get
Maybe
Nathan.
share a car.
Yeah, you can share a car.
Maybe trade cars.
Yeah, you share one. Hey, Jane, you might have to take somebody to St. John's to get correction once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to put a cage in the back.
You know that, Thursday night, it was so cold into Friday morning or Friday.
there
Some man
anything else
drove
you want
out in Danville at like 1 a.m, and he was trying to, he tried the churches, he couldn't get in. He ended up at the ATM down at Marty's. They found him huddled there, at 4:30 when they opened up. And can you imagine, it was so brutally cold, and to walk that distance even, you know?
So we could totally come, we could, how do we get
I
out?
can, well, let's go back to it.
It seemed like that wind was just like really, really.
If we leave, because this doesn't need to be here.
What is this?
So we
Oh, I'm
are,
trying to get to the car.
and somehow, there, if I go like that.
The house has just an HDMI cable, which makes a lot of this easier. We need to do that.
I'd love to know that too.
The thing that's different about a Verbo vacation home,
What is
you
that?
always have the whole place to yourself.
Okay, here we go.
Meet Sophie and Zeke. They're meeting up to go on a much-needed vacation. Both have packed their bags and have their tickets ready. But Sophie is bringing something along on the trip that Zeke isn't. A mobile driver's license, or MDL. Zeke only has a physical credential. Oh, Zeke. MDL is a driver's license that is provisioned to a mobile device and allows the holder to safely and securely share their person and license demographics electronically, resulting in a completely touch-free transaction. MDL can be updated in real time and allows the holder to share minimal data needed for the transaction. Let's see it in action. Sophie and Zeke head to the airport to get their vacation underway. But oops, speeding is not okay, even when you're excited. Sophie shares her MDL with the officer. She doesn't need to touch it or handle it in any way to verify her information, which is all kept up to date without her having to visit the DMV. Zeke hands over his driver's license to the officer. Uh-oh, Zeke failed to get a new license after getting laser vision correction. Zeke heads off to the airport with 2 tickets, one for speeding and one for not wearing his corrective lenses. At security, Sophie uses her MDL as her ID. The TSA officer knows the MDL technology is trustable. Sophie sails through. Zeke, however, is not so lucky. The officer must determine whether his license is genuine by looking for security features on the card. Hurry, Zeke. Our travelers arrive at their destination. Next stop, rental car. Zeke presents his driver's license to the agent. In comparing the photo to the man, the agent isn't convinced and refuses to accept Zeke's license. It appears that Zeke has changed his style a bit since the time his card was issued. Don't worry, Sophie can save the day. With MDL, only she can access her license. Our friends arrive at the hotel and head to the bar for a celebratory drink. The bartender can quickly and easily verify Sophie is over 21, so it's party time. Zeke orders and hands over his physical license, which offers way more information that is needed for this transaction. Looks like Zeke has a new pen pal, whether he wants one or not. Yikes. Well, both of our travelers have gotten a good night's sleep and they're headed to the theme park. They put their belongings into a locker, but oops, they didn't lock things up properly. Both Sophie's and Zeke's things have been stolen. It's a scary situation, but Sophie can have some peace of mind. Luckily, she still has her tablet, since it's also a mobile device. She can use it to download the MDL app and provision her MDL. More importantly, the thief won't be able to use her MDL, as he's not Sophie. But for good measure, she also removes the MDL from her stolen device. As for Zeke, unfortunately, the thief can easily use Zeke's license to apply for a credit card. Bet Zeke is wishing he had an MDL too. Sophie can use her new MDL to get on a plane and head back home.
This video is really,
And Zeke?
really showing how it can be your mobile license, and you see the connectivity. It could be your mobile life. And once we, start working through driver services, there is potential that, DMV will be back to talk about adding that element. But I think giving us the ability and having the support from the committee to move forward with, figuring out all of the elements that go into it, because I think, the example is how you connect phone to phone. And, and it's education, it's outreach, we have to, we make the service available, we start talking about it. I think TSA is the most common area that it is used at this point in Vermont. I can't think of anything else.
Grow.
Yeah, and do you want to add any comments to this, Mike? Because you've attended a lot of the workshops.
No, just the realization that it is confusing based on what we're trying to use it for and what it can gradually enter into. As we heard from Lieutenant Rablin the other day, it's like, things are modernizing and things are changing. In the future, they will have the ability probably to access your license when they come in the car. I mean,
Changing world, real fast. Okay.
So thank you for the conversation. Do you have any, since it's Friday and I know you have a busy schedule, but is there anything else in the miscellaneous bill that you want to, are there any other items that are unresolved that you have any questions about?
Do we want to go over what we skipped over?
What did we do yesterday?
Well, the towing, we had some discussion around that. And I think,
You were in on that.
Yeah, well, I sent the committee language. I don't know if anyone has provided it to the DMV. I haven't. Or if you provided it to the towing industry. I also haven't provided it to them. I wanted to.
Do we have any discussion about this?
I'm happy to-
Mike was here
We're not over
in the room.
I'm happy to walk through. I'm also happy to give them a copy if you tell me that I should give them a copy.
do we have a copy?
Been some
I have copies for you. I emailed it yesterday. But I just
changes, and I think Mike was in the room, so yeah.
Probably we have a bill that we have not discussed. Pertains to the DMV miscellaneous bills. That's the bill that Echo White.
S64.
Okay, is there items in there that we should know about? I haven't looked at the bill.
A tree cutting by AOT. And it's, well, we had that, I do not remember the tree in Gilberry area. And then there was, is that the one that has the noise?
Sauce systems.
And
So we did have Senator Lake actually met with us a while ago to talk about some of her ideas. There are some sections of this that we have concerns about. There are sections of the proposed bill that I would encourage that you have Michelle Boomhauer
Okay.
come
I
in
just
and
didn't
talk
know.
about.
It's not our intent to include it in any piece of that into this bill, is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
I think I haven't looked to see if there were any revisions. I
It could be a
believe,
standalone bill. I haven't looked through it. I just want to make sure that we're.
I could ask Anthea if you don't mind. There was the language on the study for at one time, I don't know if that's still in here.
The only
Yes,
reason I bring it up today is it's something we have to discuss in this bill, otherwise I can wait and have a separate bill. Okay, so I have no problem with that, but I know some of these items were brought up before. I understand the math in the
Yes.
house, they didn't get anywhere, so I just.
Are there some though that appropriately,
Yeah.
if we wanted to do them,
and
move
I
into
guess
the
that's the question,
DMV?
yeah.
the only one at this time, I believe the section 12 in her proposed bill, it mirrors what we provided in our miscellaneous bill.
You wanna review this bill and get back to us on this?
Sure.
That way we can know what.
Absolutely.
I don't wanna waste all our time on it.
Nope.
Just trying to figure out if there's anything in there we have to incorporate this bill or have a standalone bill here, but. I think that's good.
Oh, I can give you the towing language.
Okay, joint language, all right.
Do you want to talk about it?
Sure, let's do that right now.
Big caveat here, gonna be this hasn't been edited and also hasn't been looked at by the DMV or the Towing Association. I can put it up on the screen and I will give you.
I think you made a very good presentation yesterday.
Sorry. And Mike, I will send this to you as a post. I just didn't know if I was going to be doing it.
Okay, I think we have copies before us. Yeah, why don't you?
Okay, I'm just gonna put this up on the screen
You
and
did a lot of homework last week. Wow.
here are copies for you.
Thank you. I think she sleeps.
I don't think I'm with you.
I did this while you were, right after you were done talking.
Sure. Before the last word was out, you had it finished.
Yeah, I tell you, I think she did it before they left the room.
It was nice when someone said, I think she's listening. And I was like, well, yes, I'm listening to what you're talking about.
You're great. Good work.
Okay, so things are rearranged a little bit from what the Towing Association proposed. But the, if you're going off of the 6-page document that they gave you yesterday with the handwritten notes on it, part of their proposal on issue 1 was to add a definition of towing business. I tried to track what they proposed with sort of more targeted to the way that we draft language. I think they said that this came from New Hampshire. So this would be adding to Title 23. So it would be a definition that would apply throughout the title.
Little business
I don't-
or person.
Well, and the person is, the corporation, everything. And we've got that definition in Title 23 as well. So a towing business would be a person that regularly engages in one or more of the following: recovery, impoundment, transport, storage, or disposal of motor vehicles. So that's part of issue 1. The other piece of issue 1 was the lien, and we'll get to that at the end of the language. The next proposal,
That 48 hours back there.
we're going to get to that. So the next.
No, you've got it right there though.
Yeah. So the next piece was the 48 hours for abandonment from the side of the road. And there was some talk about how maybe it should be decreased to a different amount, but you said instead expand, or my take was expand the one that is a motor vehicle that has remained on public or private property or on or along a highway without the consent of the owner or person in control of the property for any period of time. So you've got that any period of time piece. And then the existing language is if the vehicle does not have a valid registration plate or the public VIN has been removed, destroyed, or altered, or the state or any political subdivision of the state, including a fire department, emergency medical service, or employee of any of these entities, has requested that the vehicle be removed by a towing business.
I would feel better if it wasn't so broad.
Okay.
I would like to leave it just for law enforcement. Just so we,
I thought we were Everybody
No.
talks about it.
Well, I know, I think the towers had suggested abroad, just like anybody that basically works for a municipality.
How about a fire department?
Volunteer firefighter.
Well, they're always gonna call law enforcement to any accident, so if there's gonna be a car they're gonna be there. It seems like law enforcement would have more information to make that decision. I mean, they're all gonna be there, I would rather just kind of have like one kind of chain of communication.
You think law enforcement is available 24 hours a day? I mean, I don't know, in some areas of that.
And it could be that the fire department calls troopers, and troopers is like, we can't get there, is the car in the way? And they say, yeah, and I'm like, okay, I'll call the tow truck. I mean, they don't have to necessarily be there, but just that,
Well, I just figured out, I want to make sure that someone has access to get that vehicle out of there. I don't know what's the committee.
So one thing I just
anybody
wanna-
could call the tow truck and say like, I work for the volunteer ambulance department in East Ocean and I need this car moved. And then later it turns out that they didn't really have the authority, it was their girlfriend's car or whatever, I just would rather it
It is
be.
very broad, isn't it?
So just one distinction, and Senator Mazza, this is to your comment about how I wouldn't want the vehicle to just be stuck there. This isn't saying the vehicle can't be towed, it's saying it doesn't meet the definition of abandoned motor vehicle, which then is what's leading to the possibility of that reimbursement.
Oh,
So I think your concern about whether there are vehicles that are left on the side of the road because law enforcement can't get there, those vehicles are getting towed. You heard yesterday that they're being called to go tow them. They're just not then able to get this reimbursement piece. So Senator Persick, I think you could narrow it to law enforcement without necessarily keeping vehicles on the side of the road longer. What you might hear from the towing companies is that they're still being called, they're just then not towing a defined abandoned motor vehicle because it wasn't law enforcement that told them to come and get it. So that might be a question.
They're gonna get it $125 versus 40.
That's a later
Yeah,
change.
but that's.
Because this sets it on that path to an abandoned vehicle, and I just think maybe that would be what we want to keep.
It sounded like yesterday that law enforcement was the only one that had the rotation
Yeah.
of how it would be. Yeah, who would call.
I do like law enforcement because say it's my car, I just think of a grace period and I feel like I would call the police saying my car's there and I'm working on getting it. I'll get it the next day or two so that at least there's a central point. But if anybody's calling all over the place, there's no coordination. I'm worried about the necessary grace period that it might take for somebody to pick up their own car.
And I think it's, once again, we have to be careful because we're talking about abandoned, not, because obviously they're getting called when there's an accident and stuff, but those aren't necessarily abandoned vehicles. I think sort of like the mobile ID discussion, we need to be clear on what's being towed and under what circumstances. So I
we're gonna
think
change.
Anthea's kind of delineation is really helpful here.
So change to
So
law
what do you think
enforcement.
we're coming up with? What have I sent you?
Like the law enforcement.
Yeah, when we're talking about abandoned, not who can call the tow company. Because oftentimes if it's an accident, insurance is paying the tow company.
Do I sense that's the decision?
Actually, if it's an accident, you have to have insurance. That's required. Theoretically, I guess.
Okay, is that what we want to try?
Okay, I'll make that change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next piece that you were talking about was clarification for purposes of that 90-day shift to when it said a landowner, and if it's then the towing company. So I think there was some clarity in the balance of the language where it was talking about brought to the property, which is presumably being brought to the towing company. But I tried to sort of rewrite the section to address what I thought you were looking for. So it would say that and this is for purposes of the paperwork, that you would then have the 90 days to complete. So the legal occupant of property to account for if there was someone who was renting a business to have the towing lot on. the legal occupant of property on which an abandoned motor vehicle was discovered or has been relocated to shall apply to the department for an abandoned motor vehicle certification on forms supplied by the department within, and this was the change that you already had, 90 days after the date the vehicle was discovered
Okay, that's good.
or relocated. An abandoned motor vehicle certification form shall indicate the date that the abandoned motor vehicle was discovered or relocated, the make, color, model, and location of the vehicle, the name, address, and telephone number of the legal occupant of the property where the vehicle is currently located. So that could be the place where the vehicle was located or where it was relocated to, and a certification of the public vehicle identification number, if any. And the existing language was to be recorded by a law enforcement officer. One of the things you heard from the towers yesterday was that sometimes law enforcement can't come to record the VIN. So I have it now as a certification of the public vehicle identification number, if any, prepared by a law enforcement officer, licensed dealer, or inspection station designated by the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles. And I think it'd be a question for them as to if that's something that is ever prepared by these entities, if they have a form for it. I just didn't know in the scramble to write the language yesterday.
So yes, we have a VIN verification form that can be filled out by law enforcement. We modify it to add in these other entities for this situation. I would not want to open up others to do VIN verifications in other situations where it's required. This one fits.
These you all license or designate, so it's very much within your,
And the designation language tracks statute because they are not licensing inspection stations for designating them. Is that what statute says? And then the last little piece here is then tracking that same language. This subsection shall not be construed as creating a private right of action against, instead of it being the landowner, it would be the legal occupant of the property where an abandoned motor vehicle is located. I was trying to cover, yeah.
occupants, owner, so occupant covers everything.
I think by doing the legal occupant, it would cover someone who was renting and someone who owned the property.
Questions? Anything else? All right. Okay.
Okay, the next change is the shift from the $40 to $125. The reason why this is all highlighted in green is because it wasn't originally included in the bill because we weren't addressing it. But really the only change to statute is going to be that shift of the number on line 16. What you don't see here is in the balance of the section, a change for how much money needs to be reimbursed up to. So in statute now with that $40 amount, payments under this section, and these are just for the reimbursements for the tows of abandoned vehicles from public property, a total of $16,000 in any fiscal year. Even though you are increasing it to $125, you are not increasing the ceiling. Based on what you've heard in testimony, I think there've only been like 2 or 3 that have been a proper abandoned motor vehicle from public property under current law for which a reimbursement is possible. It could be that bumping it up to $125 and making the other changes to like law enforcement being able to request the tow and that being an abandoned motor vehicle, that you are then going to have more vehicles that are eligible for reimbursement at a higher rate, and a higher rate yielding more people requesting the reimbursement. And I don't know if anyone can say if
Why 16,000 is a number? That's what you allocate in that fund or something? Is that?
That's what they can, I'm sorry.
It has been in statute
Oh, okay.
at that amount for a very long time. And I believe it was last year when this discussion really started, you know, we started really looking at what
Yeah,
were we
yeah.
reimbursing for abandoned vehicles. So we have not ever, during my time, exceeded.
Do you, does the money carry forward or
It's just in our operating budget. It's
Okay.
part of like paying the light bill.
Okay, so
I
you're going to use a couple, you said last year.
That's correct.
But that's $40.
This-
16,000 would do 128 vehicles. So that's what it would do.
And they had 8.
And they, right,
And
so,
we can revisit this in the future anyway, as you go.
Well, you could do it in a budget adjustment. Payments,
No, I'm fine.
payments shall terminate, a towing company should So no towing company could get more than $8,000?
Yes, and the 50% is new to me. I'm not sure if Mike had any comments on that.
And that's an essential.
It's just statute.
The 50%? Okay.
So why do you think that you only did 2 or 3 of them last year?
Because that's what the process. So I pulled the stats and based on the way the statute's written, there was 2 companies that actually qualified.
Well, why didn't they do more? I mean, I know it's hard to, why didn't they do more? I mean, is it
$40, they wouldn't go.
I know, but still, you would think they would try to
So
do more.
as I testified yesterday, everybody checks the box.
Right.
Everybody says, yes, I want $40. There's only 2 that actually qualified.
Okay.
So.
It just seems difficult to increase the amount, try to make it easier to access and meet their concerns and not lock into the 16,000, which could be a little low based on the other changes. So shall terminate payment of a total. I don't know, do we want to say, all right, sorry, you went out and towed this abandoned vehicle and we spent the 16,000, so you get nothing. I don't know, it's a first come, first serve. It's hard to know what that 125 and the other changes will mean in terms of payout. Obviously, they're designed to make it a more responsive system than it's currently in place.
Yeah, that's what, again, my question goes back to, did we do enough changes in here so that you're going to reimburse more people? I mean, I mean, it just seems to me that there's something that's not right with, if they're saying there's 800 vehicles beside the road that they're towing, and there's only 2 or 3 that got reimbursed, there's a disconnect someplace about the process. And and I'm not saying it's this fault or that fault, or it just doesn't make much sense that there's that many vehicles being towed and there's only being reimbursement of three vehicles. Somewhere there's not a disconnect.
I believe it's the definition, as Mike said, and we have not analyzed with the changes with this. I think we are making, Mike, the way I understand it, that more eligible
I believe so.
with this. And then, so we're not gonna know, because as Mike said, they're denied because it didn't fit within the parameters. And then back to, I'm just thinking about your comment,
Right.
Senator Kitchell. I don't know if we could consider having language that, you could increase the amount, or you give me the authority if I exceed it to go beyond a percent, and not that I give you a
No,
full.
I guess what I'm concerned about is why we have that in. If we're saying that we want that towing company to provide that service at the request of law enforcement, it seems to me then we are obligating that payment. And if it exceeds the 16,000, it's like anything else, you come in a budget adjustment and ask for more. So I'm wondering whether it seems to me we either are saying it's very hard to say, we want you to provide a service that you may never get reimbursed for. If our intent is you're providing a service for the public safety of the state, and we have an obligation to pay you for providing that service, which seems to me right now, we're asking them to basically do it as a public service. So if I guess what I'm wondering is, if we say that you're entitled to reimbursement, then you would not have that 16,000 cap. You would simply say, we're obligated to pay, and whatever that amount might be, if it's 8,000 or 22,000.
I think the proof is yet to be even determined to whether we've loosened up the language enough to have somebody go from 3 to 128 before we burn through the money. And so that's, but I do like the language that Michelle has suggested or put out there, that if they did burn through the 16,000, that she was able to continue reimbursement. of some sort.
Well, we do that sometimes.
And I like your idea about the budget adjustment as well. You come back through and she can say, hey, listen,
Well, we do that in other areas of spending.
Okay.
When the expenditures exceed, what's allowable or, what you can accommodate within your budget. So, I guess to me, the question for us is, the fundamental one is, do we want to say, you're providing this service for the safety of the state of Vermont or Vermonters, and whether you get reimbursed or not will be contingent on, money. It seems to me, you either say you're providing the service and we have an obligation to reimburse you for it, or you take your chances when the money runs out. And it seems like it's hard to say the money runs out, so you do it for free.
So we just get rid of the 16,000 and we just say we will pay when this happens.
That to me is the fundamental issue that we have here.
are you able to do it on your end with an open-end number? I don't think you can you? I mean, because you're doing it now because you have it within your rules of what you're allowed to do.
So, it goes back to, if you went to that I am obligated, and for some reason, my overall budget wasn't able to accommodate it, it's budget adjustment, but we have the ability to manage within our budget, and so that's what it means to me. So I don't have a line item sitting over here that says I have $16,000 and I'm only paying these from that. My budget is all inclusive, and from the budget, we're paying all of the costs associated with.
So if we bump up against that $16,000, all of a sudden you're done. Okay, we're at the 129th car. Are you going to say to them, sorry, we can't pay you?
The way the language is written, I can't expend more than $16,000.
Right.
If it says I'm obligated to, then it's my responsibility as commissioner to manage my budget, and that's another expectation.
But if you can't accommodate that, whatever that actual rate of expenditure, then you come in and say, we need to add some more money.
Right.
So to me, it gets back to the extent to which we're recognizing that this is reimbursing for the service is a state responsibility under these circumstances. And then it's hard to say, well, it is a responsibility, but up to the 129th car. That's what I'm struggling with. And which would mean you get rid of the thing that, here's 16,000 and it doesn't matter how many come in or only 2 more come in. You're out of luck. And so if you get rid of that 16,000 cap, that deals with it.
I would propose we just delete those 2 sentences.
So what I have highlighted?
Well, not just you have a lot highlighted. Everything's highlighted there. Oh, between your 2.
Yeah, between the 2 little blue dots. So it would delete from law, payments under this section shall terminate upon the payment of a total of $16,000 for towing abandoned motor vehicles from public property any fiscal year. The next sentence wouldn't make any sense because there's no cap. So a towing company wouldn't be eligible for 50% of a non-existent cap. And then you're eliminating the fact that the commissioner is only authorized to expend up to that $16,000 amount.
Yeah, I completely agree. And my mind was going to plug South Burlington today. I have to plug UVM in South Burlington every day. I was thinking of firefighter overtime. It's not like during the budgetary year, if we just have a lot of fires, we're going to pay firefighters and we're going to find the money. And I feel like in this case, we'll pay for the tows if they happen and budget accordingly next year.
Nancy, do you know legislative history of why it was ever passed?
Yeah.
I just-
Weird.
I just wrote it down.
2005, you added it, and we don't know why.
Like, was there 1 year where it was
Senator
$80,000?
I don't know, I just asked a question.
Yeah, you were here. I'm sure.
You're the only one.
He insisted it was in there.
Yeah, with own cars.
Yeah,
Okay, so delete these sentences.
like that's okay, right? Wanda, you guys know. Doesn't matter, you guys,
But
to delete it.
No, I appreciate, the way it's written right now, if the 129th car comes in or request comes in, I would be denying it because
Yeah.
I don't have,
You can come back next year.
But you don't have the authority.
I don't
Give an
have the
update, that's
authority.
all.
Yeah.
Change it next year, the year after.
That's right, and of course,
that all the
I'll
time.
come back if they break the bank and I need an adjustment or an increase.
Right, no, that happens all the time, it's not uncommon for. Okay, so we will be on that.
And then that's not gonna go away. Your last new language would be the concept of a lien. So this is going into Title IX. I did talk to David Hall in Ledge Council. So he looked at this, he said it seemed okay. So it'd be changing the title of the subchapter from artisans liens to service provider liens for personal property, adding a new section for purposes of just this section in Title IX. The definition of abandoned motor vehicle would be the one that we just talked about earlier, and the definition of towing business would be the one that was added in that earlier section. And it then is divided into two subsections. The first is the lien and the second is the bond. So it says that a towing business that tows a motor vehicle at the request of the owner of that vehicle or an abandoned motor vehicle, so again, the definition would matter, shall have a lien on the motor vehicle for the towing business's reasonable towing, storage, and remediation charges.
Let me ask, we're limiting at the request of the owner or an abandoned vehicle. It seemed to me they were concerned about like tractor trailer trucks, and the law enforcement is probably saying, yeah, you gotta clear the roads.
So that would be under the definition of, at the request of law enforcement, it would be an abandoned motor vehicle.
Okay, all right, so we've taken care of it. I just wanna make sure.
But it wouldn't be if like the fire department called without law enforcement requesting it, if you make the change that Senator Perchlik brought up.
In that case, you don't really think of it as abandoned in an accident.
It's just like,
Right. Which,
It's not an empty vehicle left on the side of the road.
No.
there's a whole different set of circumstances that happen with that.
So I'm just, it seemed like their concern was when they go out on one of these accidents and they have to do the remediation, and it's a very, expensive equipment to move the tractor and the trailer. It seems like the law enforcement will come out for an accident.
and I think right
That's
now,
what they were
I could be wrong, but I think whenever, I was in the fire department, whenever we went to an accident, I don't think we were the ones calling the wreckers. I think we called the state troopers. And they-
Yeah, because they have the list of enter, rotate.
Because then just pulling out of their driveway costs them money, so they're not gonna come out for anybody calling.
Right, yeah, they probably know who it is.
You think this takes care of the situation they're concerned about?
I think it takes care of it, with the changes you made before, it takes care of the situation where they are coming to tow a vehicle because law enforcement calls them. I don't know enough about,
If other people call.
But I guess the question is, by definition of having law enforcement call, is that equates to abandonment? Even though I'm there with my vehicle, and I guess it's a matter of,
It could, that makes it the first step to be abandoned, but it doesn't automatically be abandoned, because, if they tow my car, I'm gonna go get it, I'm not gonna let it.
Right,
sit.
yeah, there's so many processes that allow this.
they go mine, I let them have it.
Right. Same with the Corvair or whatever.
They wouldn't get
$140.
They couldn't get $140 for it.
That's what they're worried, especially after it's been an accident. You're like, well, now I really don't want
Senator Kitchell, what it's doing is it's building off of the work that you're doing for this definition of abandoned motor vehicle. So by saying abandoned motor vehicle has this definition, these are then the vehicles, even if it doesn't get to the point of the certificate of abandoned title, the 90-day process, even if it's not the public property tow, that there's gonna be reimbursement. If it is either along the highway for more than 48 hours, it's there along the highway for any amount of time, and it doesn't have valid registration or.
Wait a minute, go back up. What is double I?
Oh, that's the start of so single I covers the 48 hours, and then double I is the no time
Right.
requirement.
So
And
we're
then,
talking about it remain on or along a highway without the consent of the owner or the person So in an accident, I'm just trying to take without the consent of the owner.
Owner of the property,
Right, so that's public property.
the land,
All right,
not the car.
Control of the property.
So that would be the state's right of way if it was presumably an accident along the highway.
okay.
For any period of time if, and then there are two triggers. The vehicle doesn't have a valid registration plate or the VIN isn't there. And one of the things they were talking about was like if there's a fire and the 2 verification points, but if they're being called to tow that vehicle by law enforcement under II capital, it wouldn't matter if they couldn't verify one or both
Yeah,
of
I
the VIN
understand that.
locations.
I just wanted to make sure that we were, so that we were referring to the property owner, which is the state of Vermont law enforcement saying, get it out of here.
Okay,
Okay, so back to our lien language. So it's the request of the owner or it's abandoned motor vehicle that has that definition. They, the towing business, shall have a lien on the motor vehicle for the towing business's reasonable towing, storage, and remediation charges, and may retain possession of the motor vehicle and its contents at the towing business's place of business until the towing business is satisfied that the reasonable charges for towing and storage, I should say towing,
And that-
storage,
that's
and
language
remediation.
that exists in other states.
I don't know.
We heard that they looked at other states. Would be,
we don't know what reasonable towing is or.
well, I know the bond, I thought Vince made reference that other states require the bond or something.
So
Was
they
you
get,
remember that?
under this language, they get the lien, and then the way to get your vehicle back from the towing business is either to pay the money, you no longer owe reasonable charges, or to provide a bond for the amount of the reasonable charges, and then you can sort out after the fact what the reasonable charges are. But it's the second means for the release of the vehicle. But what the towing company wants, is the example that they said was, you know, they were saying, well, we're gonna keep your vehicle until you pay us, and then this company was like, no, you don't have any authority to keep it. But in order to like get the money from the vehicle, they're probably still gonna have to go through the whole abandoned motor vehicle process, or they're gonna have to record the lien and deal with that there. So without knowing a ton about liens, and you probably should hear from someone who knows more about liens and the operation of them, it's kind of just I get to keep this, this is my collateral. You don't get this vehicle or the contents of it back until you make good on what you owe me for having towed, stored, and any associated remediation.
I also think liens can, my experience with them is that they can be a legal entity, so that if a property is taken and they have the property, nobody would be able to sell that property to anybody else with that lien on record. So even if you don't physically have the property, the lien prevents the transfer of ownership in a legal manner. Am I right?
What about those?
Based on my understanding, yes, but you probably need to hear from somebody who knows more about liens.
If people look to see if there was a lien on.
And it would need to be recorded.
Would be able to transfer ownership and sell liens on houses to
Well,
It's
they can't-
easier on houses because there's titles.
Well,
Cars,
there's-
the
cars.
It might help to look at the artisan's
Well,
lien, which is the.
But houses can be
language.
transferred if there's a lien on it, if they don't pay their taxes, so. That's how a tax sale works. I mean, they actually can transfer, you know, they can,
The owner has to pay that lien.
or an entity, somebody, the person that carries the lien. Lots of times it's done through, the lending institutions will actually step in and pay to satisfy the lien. Right.
With contractors, it doesn't get paid for a job. You put a lien on a house and then somebody can't sell that house without making good.
Right, but for a car, you don't, like, you're not checking to see if there's a lien on the vehicle. A used car,
You have a title on it. You can't put a lien on a title.
you can, but you just might not, nobody might ever know.
Then you don't have the title held by the lien holder.
I think it gets back to the person that wants to have use of that vehicle, whether it's valuable enough for them to pursue
I
it.
think they say, I have a lien, so therefore I'm not giving you the car.
So they have.
But it might-
Yeah, let's,
This is where I was talking yesterday, it's possessory, I can't say the word, you gotta still have it. You don't have the car, you don't lien, right? And reading the artisan statutes, when you look at, you've done work on this vehicle or owed money for it, you send notice to the owner saying, I'm gonna sell your car because you haven't paid it in 3 months. And you give them 10 days notice, and if they don't respond, you sell them.
That's the enforcement, so.
try and recoup your money.
It's almost like a repossession on a house.
If you don't have the car, you don't have anything to sell.
Yeah, you can't record a lien. It's just basically, I have the car, so that's. If you follow the rule.
Lien holder's the owner, so you've got the lien or the owner and you can sell. But it's never really enumerated on the title certificate.
Well,
Okay,
this is
how are you
certainly
doing?
exciting.
Well, this gets you prepared to sell your vehicle.
You need a new car. That's what I'm saying.
Anything else?
That's it in terms of the language that
Shall we
they
put that in the DMV?
proposed.
Okay, what we're gonna do then, we'll take a